showers will fall and a few mist and fog patches will form, especially for the Midlands, East Anglia and the South East, and a touch of frost in places as well, temperatures into the low single figures or just below freezing. In the west, though, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, West Wales, Cornwall, a few showers first thing, thicker cloud and a bit more of a breeze here. The showers across Wales and the southwest will tend to disappear by mid to late morning, and actually for much of England and Wales it turns sunnier once again. But across Scotland, especially western and central Scotland and Northern Ireland, a few showers will continue. Now, widely, temperatures will reach 11 to 13 Celsius, but we could even see the mid-teens somewhere like North Devon or North Wales, given the winds coming in over the higher ground to the south. And then we keep the clear skies across England and Wales, eastern Scotland as well, on Tuesday night. That will lead, once again, to some fog patches forming, especially across central and southeastern areas once again. Further west, thicker cloud, a bit more of a breeze will prevent the frost and fog, and by the end of the night, outbreaks of rain into western Scotland and Northern Ireland, 6 or 7 degrees here, closer to freezing across central and eastern parts of England. Any fog in the southeast will soon lift as the winds pick up through Wednesday morning, but actually we keep the fine weather in the southeast through the day, whilst other areas see a band of rain moving through. That fizzles out. The much more unsettled weather arrives on Thursday and into Friday with winds strengthening.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hey, welcome along everybody. It's me, Patrick Christie's on the 8 p.m. again. Now, for those of you who thought I might have been done for the day after my 3 till 6 p.m. shift, I'm here to deliver the good news
that you're wrong about that. It's an action-packed one for you today, ladies and gents, and you're not going to want to miss a single second of it as Labour blames the Conservatives' divisive rhetoric for the unravelling riots in Merseyside over asylum seekers. We'll be debating whether it's the words or, in fact, the policies that have led to such dissatisfaction in the local community. And big one this, as the Nicola Bulley investigation stalls, I mean, some would argue it never really got going, but as it stalls and the police struggle for leads, we will hear from one of the divers who searched the river where authorities were certain that she would be. Lots of unanswered questions. We're going to be having a deeper look as well at the independent review of Prevent. We speak a lot about Prevent here, and rightly so. It's that counter-terrorism programme. Well, the report has come under fire for pushing the programme to focus on Islamism. Hardly sounds controversial, if you ask me, given the scale of that particular threat. But it seems to have struck a nerve with certain parts of the media. We're going to have a look at that, and a surprising individual, actually, managed to find himself linked to the far right, which I think shows just how woke we've gone. And just to round off a crazy day of news, could we actually be looking, at some kind of alien invasion? No, probably not. The aliens told me to say that. But what a start to 2023 that would be, hey? Because in the past day or two, we've had spy balloons, UFOs, asteroids, goodness knows what else, OK? But if you ask me, folks, anything is possible now, and genuinely, given the state of this country and the world, I think I might welcome an alien invasion. Don't forget, most importantly, we do want to hear from you, so send your views to me, and I promise to do my best to go through them. gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can ask me anything, and I will endeavour to answer it. gbviews@gbnews.uk. All that's coming your way very, very shortly, but right now, we've got the headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. Well, the top story on GB News tonight, Downing Street has refused to comment on spy balloons potentially being spotted over the UK. The United States says it's still not yet able to identify recent objects found in North American airspace after shooting down a fourth in just over a week. Rishi Sunak says the UK has the military capability to keep the nation's skies safe.
We have something called the Quick Reaction Alert Force, which involves Typhoon planes, which are kept on 24/7 readiness to police our airspace, which is incredibly important. I can't obviously comment in detail on national security matters, but we're in constant touch with our allies. And as I said, we'll do whatever it takes to keep the country safe.
Well, the White House has even had to go on record to reassure some members of the public that despite widespread speculation, there's no indication of alien activity. Instead, it's determined China has a high-altitude balloon program to gather intelligence.
We assessed whether they were sending any communication signals. We detected none. We looked to see whether they were maneuvering or had any propulsion capabilities. We saw no signs of that. We did, however, assess that their altitudes were considerably lower than the Chinese high-altitude balloon and did pose a threat to civilian commercial air traffic. And while we have no specific reason to suspect that they were conducting surveillance of any kind, we couldn't rule that out.
Now, rescuers in southern Turkey have saved the lives of several children today, a full week after devastating earthquakes shook the region. First, a 13-year-old boy was pulled alive from the rubble, then a 10-year-old girl. Out of collapsed buildings and having been buried for more than 180 hours. The number of people that have died, though, in both Turkey and Syria has risen to more than 37,000 today, with officials saying the window of finding any remaining survivors is closing. An appeal here by the UK's Disasters Emergency Committee has so far raised more than £60 million. Merseyside police say a further 2 men have been charged with murder following the fatal shooting of a woman last August. 28-year-old council worker Ashley Dale was shot in her back garden in the Old Swan area of Liverpool. 26-year-old Niall Barry and 27-year-old Sean Zeiss have been remanded in custody and are due to appear at Liverpool Magistrates Court tomorrow. It brings the total number of people charged for her murder to 4. And Buckingham Palace says the Queen Consort has tested positive for COVID after suffering from cold symptoms. GB News understands Camilla remains in good spirits. She's resting up at the moment, but is said to be very disappointed she's unable to make this week's engagements across the country. Camilla was forced to postpone a visit to the West Midlands earlier on today. And let's just bring you a little bit of breaking news we've received within the last few moments from UEFA. UEFA says it does now bear primary responsibility for failures which almost led to the Champions League final in May becoming a mass fatality catastrophe. That's according to an independent report into the scenes. Fans were penned in and tear-gassed outside Paris's Stade de France as kick-off between Liverpool and Real Madrid was delayed by 36 minutes. That news just in, confirmation that UEFA bears primary responsibility for failures in that instance. More news on that in our next hour of news. Now here's Patrick.
OK, people, this is a big one, OK? So 15 arrests have been made following rioting at the weekend outside a hotel housing migrants and asylum seekers in Knowsley. Now, it's violence we all, of course, absolutely condemn, want to make that crystal clear going in. But I also want to have a wider conversation about public dissatisfaction and my concerns that we are potentially really sitting on a powder keg as a country. Now, some, like the Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Lisa Nandy, they've blamed the government's rhetoric for the violence. Others, however, they see it differently. And are people really driven to disorder because Suella Braverman said the word invasion? And that's what I really want to pose today. Do you think that rhetoric from the government has caused this kind of incident? Might it perhaps have something to do with policies that have seen unprecedented demographic change, maybe tens of thousands of unvetted people coming to the streets of Britain, an effective open border with Afghanistan as well? The public has, after all, consistently voted against higher immigration for around 3 decades now, especially those in the areas most affected by the downsides of, some would argue, mass migration and really now as well our asylum policy. And when I say people have voted against it, basically the parties who have got in have tended to be the ones who say they're going to be tough on illegal immigration and controlling our borders better. So the fact that maybe we haven't been is, I think, a sign that maybe people are quite angry about all of this. But with me to discuss is policy analyst Rakib Hassan and commentator Bushra Sheikh. Thank you very much, both of you. Great to have you both on the show. Bushra, I will start with you. Now, again, I want to make it very, very clear. Violence, absolutely, completely unforgivable. No need for it whatsoever. I want to try and zoom out a little bit and have a look at wider public dissatisfaction and the fact that, as far as I'm concerned, and genuinely concerned about this, I think that we might be at the start of more to come. Bushra, what do you think is to blame for the kind of behaviour that we saw outside that hotel in Knowsley?
All right, I'm just going to say it as it is. This is the culmination, inevitably, of decades of anti-immigration, anti-migrant conversations. This is a strategy designed for a greater political agenda to create fear in our and amongst our communities to divide them. This is a far greater and bigger picture than what we're actually seeing.
Can I just ask, just on that, Bushra, just on that before I go to Rakib, you are aware that that particular bit of Liverpool is probably one of the most left-wing areas in the entire country, aren't you?
But this is the point. You will have a group of people that might be pro-immigration, but the moment you start using dehumanization as a way to kind of get your ideas across, which is a dehumanization of people, and the language that you're using, like invasion, those things incite hate. This is that culmination. We are seeing it play out.
Dr. Rakib, I'll bring you in now. Rakib Hassan, look, I think that potentially one of the main reasons behind this was that there has been videos doing the rounds of what appears to be, and whether it's valid or not, what appeared to be a individual allegedly from this hotel making advances towards a 15-year-old schoolgirl, and people were angry that now people are here and that, frankly, kids on the street might not be safe. Dr. Rakib, your view?
Well, firstly, as you said, Patrick, Knowsley is very much a voting stronghold. I think the narrative that the people of Knowsley are taking their cues from a Conservative Home Secretary and papers like the Sun, I find that narrative a bit suspect, if truth be told. I think that one of the things that I'd really like to point out is the fact that as a country, when it comes to the dispersal of asylum seekers, it's grossly unfair on the poorest parts of the country. Back in April 2017, there was an analysis which showed that 57% of asylum seekers, a comfortable majority, were being rehomed in the poorest third of the country. There was a more recent analysis last year which showed that 1 in 4 asylum seekers were being rehomed in just 10 local authorities, the majority of which are deprived inner city areas in cities such as Cardiff, Glasgow, Stoke-on-Trent, and a string of left behind northern towns. So I think there needs to be a discussion in terms of whether or not wealthier, more affluent parts of the country are doing their fair share when it comes to accommodating asylum seekers.
OK, Bushra, just in light of that, if I'm reading between the lines there, if some of these more, shall we say, lower economically advantaged areas, poorer areas, that's an easier way of saying it, poorer areas, are taking the brunt of this, is it actually quite, forgive me, quite snobbish of you to say that these people have all been indoctrinated by the far right and that that's where this quotes-unquote hate comes from? Actually, these are working-class, ordinary people who have legitimate concerns, Bushra.
Well, that's actually an interesting point, because some of these people that do come from those disadvantaged and deprived backgrounds, they're actually the group of people that are pro-refugees because they know what it's like to come from backgrounds where it is so difficult for them. And whilst I'm not saying that this is a 90% to a 10% case, of course, like, individuals will have their own preferences. But we also need to look at that perhaps this is a wider agenda to see that this country is actually being mismanaged. This is a distraction more than anything. This is to create divide within communities so the government get to do what they want and mismanage this country.
OK, Rakib, do you think that some people find it quite hard to accept that actually your average common man and woman on the street is not a racist? They just do not like the idea of taxpayers' money being spent on their local hotel or hotels in their town being filled with people who we may or may not know who they are or what their intentions are, and they feel as though that threatens their public safety. Do you think people maybe struggle to get their heads around the fact that it's that and not racism?
Well, I mean, when we're looking at Knowsley in particular, it's a corner of the country which is very much the definition of left behind. As a crumbling education system, I think has the highest proportion of people who are disabled and identified as being limited a lot, has a very high proportion of people who are providing a form of unpaid care. Knowsley isn't the kind of place that should be treated as some kind of relocation ground for asylum seeker dispersal. Actually, what it needs is emergency level public investment and social support. And the Home Office has a lot to answer for, actually, because it notified Knowsley Council less than 48 hours before they relocated asylum seekers to this particular hotel, which is ultimately the top-down central imposition of asylum seekers from Whitehall onto a hyper-deprived local authority in the northwest of England. I think it's deeply unfair.
It seems to be happening across the board. Bushra, do you, if you're being honest, do you think that anyone who doesn't want to live next door to or near an asylum seeker hotel is a racist?
Absolutely not. No. You know, that's not, I don't think that's a fair statement to make, and it's not a blanket statement either. We do have to understand that those individuals do exist within this country and that they are, present. And we can't label everyone with the same thing. But one thing I will say is that the UK doesn't even make one of the top 5 countries to house immigration. Like, we're not. We have 1% of the global population that exists.
But hang on a minute. Have you seen Britain on a map? I mean, I get what you're saying in terms of the numbers, but have you seen the size of Britain? I mean, it's not. Well, so what do you want us to do? I mean, we're probably making less than 1% of the world's landmass.
The global total of the crisis that the world is facing. We don't even house that many that people believe that we are housing.
OK, well, some would argue that we're not housing them because they're in hotels. Dr. Rakib, just come back to that then. Just come back to that. I mean, what Bushra seems to be saying there is we're not taking our fair share. So it even emphasises how illegitimate people's anger is.
Well, I mean, I'd make the point that we very much have a dysfunctional asylum system, because what I would like to see is a streamlined asylum system which primarily prioritises women and girls at risk of sex-based violence in their homelands. But at the moment, because we have such a dysfunctional asylum system, what we're seeing is predominantly young, able-bodied men who are being imported into the UK by people smuggling networks. So we have a dysfunctional asylum system, and I feel that it's at the moment it's not prioritising the world's most persecuted peoples. People may say we're not helping enough people. My view is we have a dysfunctional asylum system, and on top of that, when it comes to dispersing asylum seekers into the country, that process is currently very unfair.
I think that makes it, and I think that makes people less sympathetic. This is the thing as well. I actually really genuinely do wish that every single person that we had in the hotels here was an absolute genuine cast iron asylum seeker, more women, more children, people. But the fact is, I think that as long as there is at least the perception, frankly, that some people are not exactly who they say they are, then people don't have sympathy in the way that maybe they could. Both of you, thank you very much. I always enjoy our discussion. Bushra as well, you're becoming a regular on this particular show. It's great. You'll be assessing up a residency at some point. Rakib, you're all over the channel as well. You love to see it. Right. Dr. Rakib Hassan there, who's social policy analyst, and social commentator Bushra Sheikh. Fantastic way to kickstart the show. Right, now, coming up, we will be speaking to a head down, but this case has gripped the nation. It's absolutely gripped the nation. We're going to get stuck right into it because it's Nicola Bulley. OK, we're 17 days into this case now. I think it's right that initially we gave the police time, but I've got to ask now, what the heck have Lancashire Police been doing? We've gone to them for comment, don't worry about that. But realistically, what is going on in this search for Nicola Bulley? Don't go anywhere.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, wonderful people. Now, I asked you earlier on, do you agree with Labour that the government's rhetoric has led to the rioting in Merseyside? Realistically, it centres around the fact that whether or not just using the word invasion or things like hostile environments and all that stuff can actually incite people to go and riot. I think we all know the answer, but anyway, Stuart says, it's not rhetoric that's the problem. Good luck, Stuart. It's the policy. Yes, indeed, it is. And why, oh why, can people not just accept this? There is a blind ignorance to this fact now, which is that if people feel as though they have legitimate concerns about the rate of societal change, or people coming here illegally, say, or if people are seeing their hotels filled up, etc., or they don't feel safe, whether or not those concerns are even legitimate, if people have those concerns and they even feel as though they can't voice them as well, that is a problem for people and it creates a bit of a powder keg situation. I want to emphasise, yet again, people should not resort to anything like the scenes that we saw outside that Aussie hotel. My concern is how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? And a key area, Stuart, as you've identified there, is to sort the policy out. Brian says the simple answer is no. This has been brewing for nearly 20 years. Exactly, I think it's been a bit of a slow burner. Massive shame, but I do agree with you. RH, there you go, says if you put H in that, it's the king, isn't it? Anyway, not rhetoric, just there in action, or rather action, welcoming tens of thousands of these people. Well, the thing is as well, I just want to say, RH, that there's ways of doing it. And I don't think it's singularly the fact that we've got high rates of immigration, both legal and illegal. I do think that has a bit to do it, obviously, but it's mismanagement of that. And it is. And it's plonking people into places at a day's notice, not even telling the local MP in some cases. Michael says the government's refusal to place these unidentified illegal immigrants into secure accommodation has led to real concerns for the safety of people's children. And this is another one. Is it inhumane? I'm asking this, is it inhumane to put people in, basically, detention centres, OK? You possibly wouldn't call them that for the optics of it, but essentially that's what it is, secure accommodation. Is it inhumane to do that? What's happening now is leading, you're right, to real concerns because people fear that people will go out into the community and whether or not this fear is genuine, by the way, we are seeing some cases of crimes, of course we are, but we don't want to necessarily bracket them all in the same go. Of course, we wouldn't want to do that, but people do have genuine concerns, and if they're not being listened to, people get very angry, don't they? Anyway, moving on from that, just over 2 weeks ago now, I think 17 days, actually, mum of two, Nicola Butley, was reported missing after not returning home from a dog walk. Lancashire police say their theory of Nicola falling into the river still stands the case, and they say there are no suspicions of a third party being involved. But the investigation has moved towards the coast of Lancashire. Police found no new leads at the site of her disappearance. But over the last couple of weeks, commentators have suggested that Lancashire police have made a series of mistakes. I, obviously, have been glued to this case, as I think many people have. One of the reasons why everyone's so glued to it is because of how mysterious it appears. And I feel that many other people feel as though it's becoming increasingly unlikely, at least seems increasingly unlikely, that Nicola went into the river at all. And I think people are concerned about that. Here to discuss this with me is one of the head divers in the Nicola Butley case. It's Peter Faulding. Peter, it's great to see you again, and thank you very, very much. Now, I know that we don't want to sit here and slam the police. The police do a fantastic job, etc. But in your own opinion, would Nicola really have been able to fall into the river and float down the Weir? Because the police's hypothesis is she fell into the river, presumably was rendered unconscious, couldn't get out, and then has somehow managed to get out into the Morecambe Bay area and off. Realistically, is that even possible?
Right, well, we've got to look at the facts here, Patrick. Where the bench is, I was there last week with Paul, and we looked down and I showed him that at the moment there's a foot of water. On the day, it's been confirmed by the police, there was another foot confirmed by the Environment Agency. That would have been 2 feet of water that Nicola would have went into and landed on rocks. It does shelve off and it goes into deeper water in the middle. She would have to be pushed from behind and launched into the river to actually miss the rocks. If she slipped down, she would land on the rocks. And the police divers, who are highly professional, searched that thoroughly that day, all the way down that strip. And from all my experience of averaging 10 drowning victims a year, about 6 suicides, we find them, where they go down. And that's fact. They don't drift unless it's a really, really heavy flooded river when they will move down. But it was not at the time, and that was confirmed by the family.
OK, all right. And why do you think the police are still so keen to push this narrative? A lot of people have said that Nicola was wearing a Fitbit, OK, and that has been confirmed by police, as I understand it, that Nicola was wearing a Fitbit, and that there might be some evidence on that data that, you know, movement has stopped at this time or whatever. Why don't they just tell us that?
I've no idea. I mean, I've had a lot of senior police contact me and ex-military search advisors contact me as what's going on. It should have been left as an open inquiry here. We don't know. We've got no evidence apart from a mobile phone that we know of, at least that's what we know of, and a dog harness by the river. It should have been the immediate area searched extremely thoroughly. I was up there the other day after 10 days, as you know, and the undergrowth had not been beaten down. Normally, when you search, all the undergrowth gets beaten down, it gets trimmed back for any signs of evidence. There actually was no sign of evidence of any really in-depth land search that had taken place around that particular area.
And this is a huge concern for a lot of people, most notably Nicola's family, children, friends, everyone who's close to her. But also, as well, Peter, something that I think shouldn't be underestimated is just ordinary people, especially women, in the area. Now, we all hope that Nicola is safe and well. We obviously hope that nothing terrible has happened to her. She's not so... But the reality is that as it currently stands, if she's not found in the river and it appears to be unlikely that she's in there, another alternative is that, you know, someone's taken her or something like that. And until that has been identified, other female dog walkers, other women anywhere, will have a right to be very, 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 very worried about the situation. Do you think the police have done enough to rule that out?
I don't think there's any evidence to rule anything out. I mean, I've already been very blunt with Paul, and I've spent a lot of time with Paul and Emma, and just said to them, we've got to potentially be prepared for the worst here. Let's not, like you say on your show, we're too woke on a lot of things now. We've just got to say it as it is. And I've said to them, we could be looking for a body. We could be looking for a deposition site here. She could have been kidnapped. She could have been being held at a will. And this is what needs to be really well looked at. I don't know. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. I'm not here to beat the police up. I work with them all the time. They do a great job, and they're for the greater good. But I think on this particular inquiry, the media aren't being told, the public's not being told. They need to get a grip of their PR.
Yeah, I actually would go even a bit further than that. I think the media have been pretty generous with the police. I can remember similar-ish case when I was working up in the Lake District. A poor lad, unfortunately, ended up going into Lake Windermere up there, and you know, there are issues surrounding that. And really, just a couple of days in, the media, both national and local, were really going at the police, going, come on, what's going on here? What's going on here? Are you doing enough? And it did kind of spark a bit more. There wasn't that, but we're 17 days in now, and as you rightly say, don't want to slate the police or anything, but people like yourself, and you're not the only one, are saying, well, hang on a minute, were basic land searches done? Have they been done to this day? For example, even the family is saying, I mean, there are concerns about the police, Peter. There are, aren't there?
Yeah, there's lots of concerns. And I was with Paul the other day, and he was saying...
Paul is her partner, by the way, is he? Sorry to interrupt. Paul is her partner, isn't he, just for people who are watching? Yeah.
That's right. Paul is the partner, Patrick. I was with Paul, the partner, and he is pleading with them to actually search in the surrounding buildings, and they confirmed that had not been done. The one thing I will say, there's been a lot of people turning up trying to break into buildings. Yeah. Please don't do that. Please stay away. We can let the police do their job, but obviously that does need to be done thoroughly now, because we don't know where Nicola is, and I'm praying that Nicola has just walked off somewhere and will show up and she's okay. She's just walked away, but there's no sign of that with the family. She was a very happy girl. She was a creature of habit.
I'm going to go to a police statement in a second, but just one more quick one with you, if you don't mind. It's just based on something you said there about having a chat with Paul, who is the partner of Nicola Bulley. And just to confirm, so as far as he's aware, the police have said to him that they've not actually done particularly thorough searches of various buildings nearby. Is that correct? Because what are they really telling him? I mean, if I was him, I'd be going absolutely out of my head at the minute now.
He actually is going mad, Patrick, to be honest. He's holding it back. I was on the phone again to him today. He calls me to, I comfort him, and it's a difficult one. He just wants more land searches done. I mean, I've worked on hundreds of missing people inquiries over the 20-odd years, and this is the surrounding area, like I said, should have been beaten down, searched every nook and cranny, every drain, not just focus on the river. It's crazy that we're just saying she's in the river. I may be wrong. She may end up at sea. But for all my experience, this would be the first where I'm actually wrong. Normally I'm right on this type of thing with my experience.
Gosh, well, I must say, look, thank you very much for coming on, as ever. It's the second time we've spoken. In a way, I hope it's the last, because I hope they find her. But, we'll have to wait and see. Look, Peter, thank you very, very much. Peter Falling there. Now, he was heading up that independent dive team. What do you make of that, ladies and gentlemen? So, the partner of Nicola, it would appear, confirming to Peter there, that the police haven't even searched some outbuildings there. We did approach the police, and we got a comment back from Lancashire Police. Now, throughout this investigation and in the briefings held, we have stressed that we continue to keep an open mind about what might have happened to Nicola, and we continue to look at all the potential scenarios to eliminate them. But based on all of the vast amount of work we have done up to now, we continue to believe the most likely scenario is that Nicola has fallen into the river for some reason. So the police there absolutely sticking to their guns, aren't they? 100%. You are hearing it left, right and centre now from people very close to Nicola, from investigators, etc., saying they cannot get their heads around the idea that she is in that river. Coming up, we will be taking a deeper look into the response to the independent review of Prevent, this the counter-radicalisation programme. Now, there's been some hysteria bellowing from the left-wing press and some other organisations. We're going to have a little look at this counter-terror programme with counter-terror expert Tom Wilson. He's going to join me in the studio. You will not believe who he's now. Oh, here we go. Link to the far right. I'll be back in a sec.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
OK, welcome back, everybody. Now, the long-awaited independent review of Prevent came out last week, and we had some predictable but still rather disappointing headlines. Let's have a run through them, shall we? So this is a headline from The Independent, which is Prevent review calling for focus on Islamists could make Britain less safe. OK, who knew? Focusing on radical Islamist terrorism, you know, the people who maybe want to turn Britain into a medieval theocratic state. Well, that'll make us less safe. All right, OK, fine. Headline from the iNews now. Right-wing extremism is a greater threat to school children than Islamist extremism. OK, so I should add that we've mentioned, obviously, on this show that there have been 35 times more deaths from Islamist extremism than far-right extremism in the UK since 2005. Yes, far-right extremism is on the rise, but it is from a much lower base. This is in The Guardian. Now, Suella Braverman's new plan to stop attacks may well increase them. What? What? How can that? OK, all right, fine, we'll let you have that one. Oh, here we go now from Middle East Eye. Prevent review is a dangerous whitewash. In what way? From the much respected and not in any way biased Amnesty International, no. The Shawcross review is deeply prejudiced and has no legitimacy. OK, all right. And lastly, from the Muslim news site 5 Pillars. Muslim organisations call for Prevent to be scrapped. And indeed they have, actually. That is one of the key reasons why we're talking about this today. But dare I say, the report, it struck a nerve, didn't it? There's been a bit of a defensive tone in the air, and I wonder why. Well, someone argued that there really is a lot of the left-wing press, left-leaning press, and they've made up their minds, possibly, long before this review was released, mainly because of its author, William Shawcross. He committed the crime of making a quite accurate statement, some would say, that Europe's relationship with certain elements of the, well, Islamic community is among the greatest, most terrifying problems of our time. That's what he said, and it certainly was talking about the radical Islamic community, their Islamist community. As a matter of fact, the statement was made amidst the 7/7 bombings, well before Charlie Hebdo, the Manchester Arena bombing, etc. You catch my drift. But it's all gone even further, because now everything seems to be far right, doesn't it? So does everyone. Joining me to discuss the reaction to this report and how its recommendations may help counter-terrorism and extremism is Tom Wilson of the Counter-Extremism Group. Thank you very much, Tom. Great to have you in the studio as well. Were you surprised initially about the backlash to this report?
No, I think it was entirely predictable. We've seen in this country that there's been a concerted campaign to try and undermine counter-terrorism efforts, which is what Prevent is part of. I don't think anyone's denying, least of all William Shawcross, the author of this report, that there's problems with Prevent. But when you're calling to scrap our counter-radicalisation programme and you're not saying what you want to put in its place, I think people are going to question what your motives are for doing that.
Yes, indeed. And if what people are saying is that there are, which they are basically, there's racist undertones to this, it's disproportionately targeting the Muslim community at large and all of this stuff, is it an attempt to try to cancel something that's designed to keep us safe and using that big racism banner in order to be able to do that, to silence people?
Well, I think many people will draw their own conclusions about what the motives are of people who don't want us to have a proper counter-terrorism programme. But it is the case that some of the people who are opposed to this programme have praised Jihadi John, supported, encouraged people to go on violent jihad overseas, that kind of thing. So I think people will question their motive. The racism claim about Prevent has been there for a long time, and yet this independent review has happened, and far from finding that it is targeting Muslims, it's actually found that in some cases the programme is neglecting Islamist extremism and is probably disproportionately focusing on what it defines as far right.
Well, and this is quite an important point, OK, because the far right banner is something that absolutely shuts people off. And we had a chat earlier on, actually, about some of the protests that were taking place outside a Knowsley hotel, an asylum seeker hotel, yet again, emphasising nobody condones violence, I don't condone violence, but saying that everyone who doesn't want to live next door to Simon goes, oh, it must be far right. It's an absolute shocker. And this definition of far right appears to be getting broader and broader and broader, doesn't it?
Yes, well, I mean, we're quite fortunate in this country that we have a very small far-right terrorist threat. It's there, it's not as big as it is in North America and Central Europe, but we have that as a smaller threat. The whole point of Prevent is not that it's supposed to target anyone with, I don't know, unpleasant views. It's supposed to make sure people don't become radicalised into terrorism. So when you see headlines such as we had over the weekend that Jacob Rees-Mogg was included in Prevent monitoring and analysis, you have to question what are they defining as far right.
Did they give any explanation for that? Because, to be honest with you, that just sounds... I mean, I've met Jacob numerous times. The idea that he would be included in something like that is pretty laughable.
Yeah, I think that what they were trying to do at the Home Office was they knew that they had to write a certain number of reports about Islamist terrorism, and then they realised we want to be even-handed, so we better do a load on the far right as well. They search around and look for things that they can monitor, and they started monitoring people on Twitter who were who they described as being patriotic, and said that... Yes.
Now, that's an important one, because that's my concern, is that patriotism is now just being called far right.
Right, well, they've identified a group of Twitter users who they called patriotic and proud, and they said that Jacob Rees-Mogg was among the people who were popular with this cohort. So it's a really tenuous link to what this has to do with far-right terrorism. What William Shawcross's report does is it says, let's get Prevent back to focusing on terrorism, not every group of person who might have a controversial opinion.
What would you say to people? Let me just ask this question. What would you say to people who do legitimately believe... I mean, I had an imam on last week, actually, who said that he felt as though the Prevent programme was against all Muslims.
Well, I would challenge somebody like that to demonstrate how it's against all Muslims. I think that by targeting the most extreme elements of a movement, you actually do everyone else in that group, in that community, a favour, especially because Islamist terrorists don't just blow up non-Muslims. Often they target other Muslims who disagree with them. I mean, there are so many Muslims who work in Prevent and who work in counter-extremism. I think it's ridiculous to suggest that it's an anti-Muslim programme.
Yeah, indeed. Just finally, just kind of slightly return to something we were talking about a little bit earlier on there, which is that playing the tape forward a bit, right? So playing the tape forward a bit to slightly younger generations who are coming through now. This idea of patriotism, being proud to be British, whatever that even really means, you know, do you think that there's going to be less of that? My concern is that reports like this or comments like this would insinuate that actually not only do we not have anything worth protecting, but if you want to protect it, there's probably something wrong with you as well.
Well, that's an interesting idea. What Prevent's supposed to do is it's supposed to promote British values in schools, for instance. So you would hope that would encourage for a future generation to be really proud of what we've built in this country as a democracy and a free society. And the whole point about the kind of people that Prevent is supposed to be going after are the people who hate a free society like ours. So I would hope that for many young people, they would see that and it would increase patriotism.
And yet it's identifying people as, quote, patriotic and proud, and potentially
as in some way a problem.
As a problem.
It looks as though that's what some people within Prevent have been doing, yes.
Well, it's fascinating stuff, and thank you very much. And that is Tom Wilson there of the Counter-Extremism Group. OK, right, coming up. Could this be the end of the world? OK, let me start again. Could this be the end of the world? Or perhaps the war of the worlds? Yeah, I know. Well, there's been some speculation about UFOs in the US, and as they actually admitted that they are yet to identify an object that was shot down over Lake Huron last night. It's a tone shift, isn't it? Anyway, you won't want to miss the guest that I've got for you, and I am back in 2.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Aliens. Who had that one on their tarot card for 2023? Is anyone else been feeling as if they've fallen down some kind of Alice in Wonderland hole in the ground the last 3 years? I'm going to wake up one of these days, just check my phone, and it'll be sometime mid-January 2020, and I'll go off to work just thinking I've had one of the weirdest dreams of my life. I'm sure of it. But anyhow, let's have a look. In case you've been quite literally living on the moon with your fingers in your ears, massive amounts of UFO sightings. People are calling them Chinese weather balloons, but we all know the truth. Anyhow, let's have a look at the latest UFO footage that's been floating about, shall we? OK, so look at that thing. Just look how it moves. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know about you, but... Whoa, what was that? Did anyone else see that flash up on the screen? Hold on. Wait, we got some... What? We've got some breaking news, people. It's just been confirmed that the United Kingdom has made contact with a being from another planet. No word as yet on their demands, but Rishi Sunak, looking snazzy there, Rishi, has arrived at a hastily arranged press conference with supposedly the alien leader. We have the first footage of he, she, they, who knows, coming in. Oh, there he is. Yes, absolutely blimey. I mean, Rishi might have his work cut out for him there. Who knows what language that thing speaks? But was it a sentient life form? Who knows? Anyway, right, OK, joking aside, of course, that was Sam Smith. What we do know is that the Pentagon cannot say with any certainty whatsoever what these objects are or how they are able to remain airborne. They've shot down 4 of them. One of them, at least one of them, was believed to be a balloon, though, so yeah. But it could be aliens, it could be China, it could just be balloons. Here with us now is the international security expert and a man so dashing some people say he must have come from another planet. It's Will Geddes. Will, thank you very much. OK, so, now, why is it that we're still not being told categorically that these things are not alien?
That's a really good question, Patrick, and I'm not really sure I'm the man to give you the answer. I mean, the Pentagon, as we've seen today, has been somewhat flip-floppity about giving any kind of clarity as to what's going on, and especially the fact that they didn't deny that they were UFOs or potential aliens, which they have now retracted. I'm very pleased to see some common sense has prevailed.
OK, all right. So on a slightly more serious note, people obviously were concerned about an impending alien invasion. You look like a man who has a pre-prepared bunker and is all kitted out for any kind of catastrophe. Yeah, you want to be near Will in a crisis. But on a serious note now, is this actually a worrying precursor to potentially the start of World War III? We've had Putin rolling the tanks into Ukraine. We've got the Chinese sending the weather balloons or whatever over the top of it. And, you know, I mean, nuclear Armageddon. Is this what we're about to see?
No, and I'm sorry to disappoint you, Patrick. No, we're not looking at Armageddon. This is pretty straightforward, and why the Americans are being quite so cagey about it when they were developing their own program in 2019 for high-altitude balloons to do pretty much what these Chinese ones, I would presume, will be doing. Doesn't come as a huge surprise, or does come as a huge surprise, the fact that they're going, wow, don't know what this is. This is very peculiar and very odd. The Chinese have been doing this right back to the 10th century. And in fact, balloons have often been used in various different means, whether it be for reconnaissance purposes or whether it be for dropping. And this is what the Americans were developing in 2019, tiny transmitters that they could drop into an opposing country, which could then assist them with targeting.
OK, so one of the concerns was that they didn't know what one of these things had as a propulsion system, and supposedly it was interfering with various jets' radar as it got closer, or technological systems. What does that mean to you? I mean, if they are claiming to be baffled by this thing, do you think that they're not really baffled, actually they're lying to us?
I think they're being somewhat ambiguous, and they're obfuscating around this, Patrick. That's my personal view on this. You know, they're going through the pantomime of reviewing, obviously, the debris of these balloons that they've shot out of the sky, but bearing in mind that this is not isolated to the United States. In the last week, there were Chinese balloons which were actually found to be coasting over Costa Rica and Venezuela. In fact, the Chinese embassy apologized for one of these balloons floating into Colombia, and that caused a bit of an international scandal, albeit it was localized there. But there have been 40 countries in 5 continents that have had similar incidents like this taking place. So it's not particularly brand new news.
No, exactly. I mean, something high in Colombia. Who would have thought? Will, thank you very much. Will Geddes there, who is, of course, international security expert and, indeed, a man so dashing he must have come from outer space. Anyway, it's time for me to be pummeled. That's right. This is where you got to ask me anything, and I apparently have to just sit here and take it. Sue says, do you believe other life exists out there? Well, it's interesting, isn't it, Sue? Because, so, I'm a religious individual, OK? And part of me thinks, well, I'm pretty sure that I believe that God just created the world and then everything in it. And is there a concern that it might in some way discount the established religions of the day if it was acknowledged that there was actually life elsewhere? But then you look out there, don't you, and you think, well, can we all be alone? I don't know. But, Sue, I would quite like to meet those little aliens, although I imagine they'd come down and take one look at someone like Kim Jong-un or maybe even just Joe Biden. Oh, I'd probably think Joe Biden was one of them. Sheila says, did you remember your Valentine's Day tomorrow? No, OK, right, thank you very much, everybody who's been pummelling away. Dan Wootton is up next, and I believe Dan is here now. Yes, he is. What's on, Dan?
Oh, Patrick, I've just been in the dressing room, and I think you have bought a very nice Valentine's Day present for your future wife. If that was yours, that was yours.
And there goes the surprise.
But you need to write the card. You need to write the card. So don't be all coy. So, look, we've got lots coming up tonight. Obviously, all of the topics that you have been covering, including the situation in Knowsley with Laurence Fox, Neil Oliver and Calvin McKenzie as well. But we've got a really fascinating interview, too, with Riley Gaines. Now, she is the star US swimmer who had to share a dressing room, a changing room, with Leah Thomas, the trans competitor. There's a big scandal about this developing in the US. She's going to reveal all in a UK exclusive interview.
Wow. I mean, as ever, I don't know why I'm amazed anymore, Dan, because it's every night with you, isn't it? Dan Wootton will be coming your way very, very shortly. And certainly by the sounds of it, you absolutely do not want to miss it. Thank you very much, everybody. I've thoroughly enjoyed filling in for this particular show. I'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. for my regular slot. There you go. I think I've had enough, don't you? I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello there. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. The new week has got off to a fairly fine and dry start for many of us, and that will largely